Yeah, thanks, Toby. So once we do have that validated measured increase on a specific project, as I mentioned before, that really kicks off the process of offsets reporting and ultimately lodging that crediting application to the Clean Energy Regulator. So in order to do that, there's actually quite a few steps that we need to go through. And the key call out here is that this is a process that AgriProof really manages end to end. So we do a lot of work to really try to distill the complexity in this process and make that as simple and easy as possible for all of our partner landholders. So really, probably the first key piece of information that we do need to acquire throughout this process is information regarding the actual implementation of those eligible carbon building activities on the farm during that project period. So that's the period since your project was baseline up until that subsequent sampling round. So for example, if your eligible activity is altering stocking rates, it might be information regarding, have you increased your paddock count? If your activity relates to pasture renovation or pasture rejuvenation, it might be what areas have you renovated, what areas have you rejuvenated through seeding activities. So getting an idea of what's actually happened on the land over that period is really important to showing that those eligible activities have been implemented. But this is also important to allow us to quantify the emissions associated with the project for that project period. So things like the stocking rates, the rates of application of fertilizers are really important for us to be able to quantify those emissions. The reason we need that emissions information is we have to calculate something that's called net abatement. So that net abatement is essentially the sequestration of the carbon in the soil minus any emissions associated with the project for that reporting period. It's really important to note there, though, that in terms of quantifying those emissions, it is relative to the baseline period for the project. So that baseline period is the 5 years, in simple terms, essentially the 5 years leading up to the establishment of your project. So provided you haven't significantly increased those emissions in your project period, any deductions against your sequestration of the carbon in soil at that point in time would be minimal. So if you've massively increased stocking rates, something like that, then there may be some deductions, but if it is only a small change relative to that baseline period, then yeah, there's limited deduction on that sequestered carbon in the soil. So it's really important too that this is really valuable process in understanding that whole emissions profile for your individual operation as well outside of the carbon project. Calculating that net abatement, it actually involves more than 85 individual calculations. So we've done a lot of work at our end to really streamline that process, make that as efficient as possible at our end. So it really is just plug the numbers in and get that result. And again, taking away that complexity from all of our partner landholders. Really then it's a document compilation exercise. We do have to provide a lot of information both to auditors and regulators throughout this process. So our document stack that goes to the audit team, and I'll come to that in a second, generally runs in the order of 100 to 200 individual files that we have to provide at this point in time for them to do all their checks that they need to do regarding the integrity of the activities that have been taking place and showing that we complied with all the regulation. So again, complexity that we're managing, ensuring that it's as simple and easy as possible for you. All our projects do have to go through a third-party independent reasonable assurance audit at their first offsets report. So if it is your first time going through to accrediting application, we do have to engage this third-party independent audit. Again, a process we manage, but what this does mean is that there will be a site visit. So an AgriProof representative and one of the audit team will come out, visit you on farm, and really that visit's just to tick off some boxes for the auditor's perspective in terms of the way we structured the project, in terms of where the sample points have been taken, where the boundaries are, but also to have a conversation with you regarding those eligible activities, what you've implemented, where you've implemented it. These visits usually last somewhere between 2 and 3 hours, and really they're conducted in a very conversational manner. So usually it'll be just a drive around the farm, have a conversation with the auditor. They'll look at what they need to look at, and all done in a couple of hours. So Again, we do a lot of work to try to manage that process and make that audit site visit go as smoothly as possible. Once the auditor is satisfied, we get a report from them that states that they're happy that we've complied with all the relevant regulation. Once we get that audit report, again, it's another document compilation exercise. We lodge the crediting application with the Clean Energy Regulator. So this is where we actually provide a number to the regulator saying this is the number of Australian carbon credit units that we're applying for, provide all that supporting documentation, and then the regulator does their assessment. The Clean Energy Regulator mandate a 90-day assessment time. So once we've got that crediting application lodged, it can take up to 90 days for that assessment to take place, potentially more if they have to come back to us and ask additional questions. So we try to make sure the quality of the information we're providing is top notch right from the start, so that we reduce the number of questions that the regulator have to come back and ask us at that point in time. So again, we manage that relationship. We manage the questions that come back from the regulator and make sure that we're responding to those in a timely manner. So all going well, we get through the audit, we lodge that crediting application, regulator does their assessment. They then issue their statement of abatement, which basically says that the regulator has awarded those ACCUs to that project. And once those ACCUs are issued, the 75% of those ACCUs that go to our landholders at that point in time, there's optionality in terms of how they're dealt with. So at that point, I might pass it back to Toby, let him run through some scenarios as to what might happen once those credits have actually been issued to the project.